Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mo After Dark on the College Football Mafia Network. I am your host, Moen. To my left or right, depending on your orientation, is Rock and Rant, my co-host. How you doing today, Rock?
I'm doing good, recovering from a mega 12-hour sprint of watching every game known to man. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think I watched Boise State kind of stumble there at the end of the game, and that was the last game of the night for me. I did not catch anything that was later than that. I think Arizona State, Mississippi State was still going on. Arizona
Right.
State was up big in that one, so I think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I finally got to sleep. So definitely an exciting time of football.
Absolutely.
All right, so let me. All right. Sorry about that, folks. I'm just trying to work with some audio issues here. I think I have got everything sorted here on the phones. Hopefully, when you call in, you will be able to hear Rock. And if he has a question for you, he can ask you. Bear with me. I'm 16 hours into this audio journey. We just got it corrected where you can hear people on the phone, but I may need to tweak the equalizer settings a little bit. Same if my voice sounds a little strange to you, it's running through an equalizer now, so I probably have to adjust that as well. I did not grow a third testicle overnight and get a very deep voice, so
And this is not Skynet, and you're not Arnold?
I am not Arnold. This is not Skynet, but we're doing what we can. Let's say hello to some people who jumped in here early. Joaquin Morales says, hey, Moen and CFM fam, don't forget to smash that like button. It's free and makes Moen happy. How about them Sun Devils? Yeah, if you didn't catch us last night, we did a late show last night, late on the East Coast. We did Saturday Mafia Live, and we personally apologize for our take on ASU. We had them at the bottom of the Big 12, and it looks like they're at least top of the mid or close to the top of the Big 12, playing very, very well out there in the desert. Antoine Coates, it's going to be a dogfight for any team to get a win over ASU this season. The defense is physical and the run game is punishing. I expect the passing game to improve this season.
Well, that is an early week 2, or I guess post week 2 hot take for sure.
I like that leprechaun, by the way. Did you hand draw that one, or did you find that somewhere?
That is one from like 30 years ago. I had designed on a T-shirt that we sold around Miami campus for a game, and like I had somebody recreate it as a graphic file so I could do it again a few years ago. And now I'm using all the tools to cut it out, and it was like a perfect thing to have falling for today.
It looked good. I might put that on a T-shirt. Timothy Green says this was a great weekend for some of us and not so much for others. Let's get ready for another great show, y'all. It was a great weekend for Ohio State. We saw Michigan lose, we saw Notre Dame lose, and we won by 56 and shut out Western Michigan.
You
for you too.
It was the holy trinity, the unholy trinity of Miami fandom is still in disarray, and we added Notre Dame to the mix. So you can't. I couldn't be personally happier with the state of college football so far this year.
Scavin, yes, says, hello, gentlemen, go Big Red. You're right. They absolutely dominated. We'll talk about this a little later, the Sugar-Sanders controversy, but Nebraska absolutely dominated that team. Absolutely dominated. Where my Zona brother Immaculate at, I'm giving him time to grieve, man. I'm giving him time to grieve.
We might have to do a wellness check, though, to be honest.
That's true. We might have to do a wellness check. He was promised an offense, and they didn't show up. So, by the way, if you've seen Iowa's offense, please call the FBI immediately. Bob Steiner says, hello, everyone. See you, Bob. Stephen Vite, my Bobcat brother, says, good weekend to be Mac fan. Right. Bowling Green State played Penn State tough. Northern Illinois pulling off the upset. I've told people to stay tuned to Maction. It's a great football product. It's on throughout the week. make sure you tune into it. You can find them at Max Sports on Twitter if you need to check the schedule.
And when it's all said and done, like right now, you can't rule them out for taking that spot 12 in the CFP.
Yeah, I was going to say, as bad as Boise State's defense has looked, I wouldn't be shocked if the MAC gets a G5. Northern Illinois got to play North Carolina State yet, I believe.
They do. I think it's in a week or two.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they win that game, they should be well on their way to earning that spot. But with Maction, you never know. You could lose to any team any given week. Steven will be able to tell you about that. Hi, guys. College football is great versus the NFL. Yeah, I'm a Bengals fan, so I will concur that. I was promised, greatness, and I got a burnt third.
Yeah, and you got your team wiped out like 60% of suicide picks across the country because that was the highest odds game for most going into the thing when you're not sure what teams really are. So there's gonna be a lot of people who have suicide pulls too that automatically happen really damn fast because so many people got wiped out.
Yeah, and we can't pull out the Mike Brown bags yet because he actually invested in the offensive line. They did not play, and neither did the defense apparently. Illini Ted, who's a happy guy, says hello, guys. The Fighting Birds won this weekend over the Jayhawks. Don in Kansas says, evening, guys. This is probably not a happy guy because the Fighting Birds beat Kansas.
Did you just magically pull those two back to back, or did the chats just come in sequence?
It just came in that way. I think it's geographical. Moen sounds good. Thank you, Bob. I might put more compression on my voice. I hear Moen just fine. Fantastic.
We can Milli Vanilla you. We can completely auto tune you into saying everything correctly.
Before you joined Rock and Rain, I was on here having fun with myself, going, "Hey, this is Moen, 97.7 on your dial, number one in your hearts."
Hey, you are like a city away from where rock and roll radio was born, so.
That's right. I'm a little further away than that. But by the way, the phone lines are open. If anybody wants to call, feel free to call. We didn't get a lot of comments in last night. I want to get your comments. I want to get your takes. We put our takes out there last night. We'll talk a little bit about some subjects, but really like to hear from you guys tonight. So leave it in a comment, give us a phone call, and we will go.
Yeah, absolutely. There were so many games that, without you guys chiming in, we will forget games that were massively important or shocking because there was just the laundry list is pretty extensive. And I think on the Sunday night show, we're flying by without the notes, just the memory.
Yeah. Pickles in the group chat last night was trying to convince me that Oregon, that would be the perfect for them, that if Oregon lost. And I said, I don't think we're going to get the trifecta. Notre Dame lost, Michigan lost, Ohio State won. I was happy. Now, if Oregon would have lost, I'd have been even more happy. But at that point, I had shot my shot, if you know what I mean. Daniel Gygax says, hi, everyone. West Virginia bounced back with a big win. Coy says, hi, all, and let go, Illini. We talked about this last night. The Illini have got a game with Nebraska in the coming weeks. Both those teams could be undefeated coming into that game. That could be a matchup that nobody had circled at the beginning of the year that might be one of the better games early in the season.
There's definitely like a recency bias, right? Because we are really paying attention to right now. But for me, what the first 2 weeks have done has made me change how I look ahead at schedules and what games might be important for all of the P4 conferences. And it feels like, just from whatever you can recall, it has changed more after week 2 than I can recall in recent memory. Like, I didn't have Syracuse in the bingo card for key games in the ACC months ago, or Illini, right, as a possibility against Nebraska, and other games have fallen off the radar. So it could be pretty interesting to see how the seasons develop across all of the P4 and into the G5 for sure.
Yeah, we had BJ call last night, and he mentioned he was afraid that the ACC and Big 12 wouldn't get in more than one team each due to the Power 2 bias. I don't think that's the case. I think you might see one or two teams out of the ACC or Big 12, but I just don't think it's going to be the teams people expected. I think people expected Florida State and Clemson to come out of the ACC and both get in. And Clemson bounced back out a big win. They could still make it, but
Yeah, they
You
still
know,
have
it might be a
shot.
Syracuse could make it in there. I mean, Syracuse is a contender. Kyle McCord's playing really good football for him. And then you've got in the Big 12, you've got Kansas State eked one out against Tulane. Oklahoma State roared back against Arkansas. So,
From what you've seen, because I haven't watched Ohio State games this year really, other than catching Jeremiah Smith highlights, do you feel like, hey, this is one of those things where Kyle McCord rounded up in the right place and you guys got the right quarterback, or do you have any degree of, I wonder if we have the right quarterback, and maybe it would have been good if Kyle McCord had stayed and gotten that confidence boost that he seems to have in Syracuse?
With the offense Chip Kelly's running, I think it works better with Will Howard than it would have with Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord just didn't have mobility. He would panic in the pocket a lot of times and throw bad passes. Will Howard, they've got him rolling out on RPOs. And yesterday he ran that about 4 times, and every time it went for at least 10 yards. So I was happy with Will Howard's performance. Jeremiah Smith, that kid is just front. I've never seen a freshman play at the level he plays.
Yeah, enjoy your whatever. What's the minimum, 2 or 3 years, depending upon his age, that you're going to have with him.
Yeah, I mean, he caught a 70-yard touchdown pass. It was like a 10-yard pass and a 60-yard run yesterday, and I think he had another touchdown as well. So, but all the receivers look good. Will Howard distributed the ball well. So, Illini Ted says NIU got glad to get that pot o' gold. Coy says great win by Nebraska. I won't jinx him by saying Nebraska is back, but I was impressed. Keep chopping. Resident Rutgers fan said Notre Dame didn't bend the knee, but they sure got bent. I will agree with you on that, sir.
Excellent comment.
Can I call you Mo and Headroom tonight? I'm not stuttering. You get to say this one. Clay called last night, and I let him say it because I was feeling bad for him, but you have to say this, Rock.
Go Blue. Where you're going, though, I don't know.
Cougar Track says offense was bad, but they got the victory. Yeah, I'd picked SMU at 10.5 points, and BYU shut me up. So
I was right there with you.
Their defense shut me up.
I am off of the SMU is going to overperform in the ACC train. I think they're going to get training day the rest of the year, and if you know, you know.
I think it's G5 City. They were G5, and they had no business coming up. Speaking of other G5s that had no business coming up, Cincinnati really screwed the pooch yesterday, blowing a 21-point lead late in the game and letting Pittsburgh come back and beat them. Houston looked good against Oklahoma through 4, maybe 3.5 quarters until Oklahoma pulled away.
Pretty impressive for Houston / demoralizing for Oklahoma, when Houston has widely been predicted to be in the bottom quarter of the Big 12 this season. So everyone has a bad game, so you can't completely do that. But heading into the SEC, that was not a good omen.
Daniel Gygax said, killed my survivor pick. I apologize. Well, I'm not going to apologize. I wasn't out there on the field. I'm just a fan. But, yeah, you paid Joe Burrow $200 million, you'd expect him to throw for more than 200 yards. Sparky won 4 games versus Pac teams in 2 seasons. Nothing like the SEC and Big 12 light to spark a win streak. Boy, these Arizona State guys are getting bold quick.
I mean, we've pounded all 6 of them super fast, so I'm impressed.
Illinois at Nebraska will be ranked versus ranked. Wild times we live in. Truth to that. Dogs and Dubs says go Big Red. We're finding the Nebraska fans too. It's funny how when winning comes around, you start seeing all these fans.
But you know what? Nebraska, a grateful country, thanks you. I don't think they've completely put it all away, because there's still a lot of hate watching that will get Colorado beat constantly in the media. But that was an impressive, sort of obvious win, and the Deion saga continues, but still no victories of magnitude.
Daniel Gygax said, but the Steelers did in Iowa today with 6 field goals. That's true, but Justin Fields, he did have a very nice, pretty pass that got called back. And I'm not even a Steelers fan, and I thought that call was BS.
A win is a win. Take it in week 1.
Yep. Undefeated teams thus far this season: Miami and USC underrated. I agree. Alabama and Oregon overrated. Yeah, if you're going by the score of that Alabama game and you didn't see any of it yesterday, that score is not indicative of how close that game was. That was within one score in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, listen, I'm not really one of those people who's in the whole let's not have preseason polls, because we're all going to want to have some relative idea what people are going into the season. And in theory, it shouldn't really massively impact in a 12-team playoff, other than, the theory that we think, but we don't know that the committee might look at somebody like Georgia Tech beating FSU if they were ranked at the time kind of thing. But if you're going to do those kind of polls and start the season off, you have to be willing to reset them a lot more in the opening weeks when the play on the field doesn't indicate that. And Oregon should not be ahead of USC right now based off of play off the field, flat out. I won't even go into the Miami side, but
100%. Ricky Tungate is gifted a membership to the College Football Mafia. Thank you, Ricky. I don't have my YouTube up. I don't know who that was gifted to, but please, if you receive that gift from Ricky, make sure you thank him in the chat. If you're watching on demand, make sure you thank him in the comments section. We much appreciate it. Let me try and find. I don't have my tablet up. Let's see. There we go. Going old school today with just the six sound effects. How long will Immaculate be in morning? He's an Iowa kid. He'll bounce back.
Immaculate's in the chat. He just said he just commented.
Immaculate is here. It says terrible weekend. And I agree. I had Iowa at 3 points, and even they were driving down. It was 19-17, so I knew Iowa wasn't going to cover. And then they let them get a 52-yard field goal.
I was very optimistic for Iowa after that second half last week in terms of the offense. So it was kind of, I got wiped out. I had Iowa in every single picks, no odds out there. I thought they were going to, even though that game is always really interesting, I thought it was going to be a good showing for them.
As did I. Timothy Green says 49-14 West Virginia over Albany. Albany got a couple of speed players, let me tell you. I didn't catch any of that game. I saw Coos was a little worried in the first half, but then I guess in the second half they kind of opened it up a little bit on him.
Yeah, Miami's backup quarterback Poffenberger came from there, so I know he had some good skill talent alongside him last year that got his eyeballs on him to have him get some transfer portal offers.
Miami is the ACC team to beat. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. They've looked the best of any ACC team so far. Syracuse isn't even in the new rankings, are they? Let me pull up the rankings here. I do not see the
Boston College made it, but I don't think Syracuse did.
Yeah. Cuse is not in the top 25. But they will be. Just hold on. Kyle McCord is looking pretty good for the Cuse. Perfect system for him. Illini Ted, big leading Michigan State, just as we all expected. Yeah, Michigan State got a huge win this weekend over Maryland. If that was my one pick for the week where I said this is an absolute lock, it would be Maryland over Michigan State, and Michigan State won that game.
Yeah. I had Maryland as well, so because Michigan State wasn't, that impressive in week one, so it made sense to make that pick, but good for them, man. Like, he have a great coach. I think he's going to do a really good job there. I just thought it was going to take a little bit more time, and still might ultimately, but a good win for them over Maryland.
Looks like Timothy Green was the one who was gifted that membership. So Timothy Green is now a full-blooded member of the Mafia. Syracuse is ranked 29th in the AP.
Just one good weekend away from falling into the top 25 with the way things have been churning over in the bottom half. So
Nathan Campbell says Cowboys quarterback for your deal. I wouldn't have paid Dak Prescott that much money, but whatever. We overpaid for Joe Burrow. At least he went to a Super Bowl. Immaculate says terrible weekend. I feel for you, Immaculate. I do, brother. That was a tough game to watch. They gave us, the worst part was they gave us a sliver of hope. They showed some offense the week before. And I thought for sure this offense is going to show up and score at least 10 points, make that cover easily. And I got a quarterback issue there. And I still think it might be a Kirk Ferentz issue. I think it might be time for the old man to go.
Yeah, if you keep changing the the players and you get the same results, it's got to come back to the leadership there. I'd feel the worst for Iowa and Arkansas fans this past weekend.
Yeah, and here he goes. QB didn't even have 100 yards passing. Yeah, it's systemic. I think immaculate. I don't know that there's a QB you could put in that system that could get 100 yards. Maybe all the way back to Flutie for Boston College. Yeah, Iowa State's last drive impressed me. The thing that impressed me most was the big pass. That, Iowa had a vaunted defense, and I don't know how they let that guy get behind him, but they did, and he went the distance. Timothy Green says, I am just glad to see that Notre Dame lost their ass. Let's go, college football fans. Okay. Yes. Immaculate. Keeping it in perspective. It could be worse, so I could be a Notre Dame fan. Yeah. You lost a rivalry game on a last-second field goal. They lost to a MAC team at home that they paid $1.4 million for the privilege.
Poor leprechauns.
I think this is going to be Marcus Freeman's last year in South Bend. Alabama played USF in 2003, 40-17. They won 4 games that year, if it's any guide. They struggled against USF mightily in the first 3 quarters. Friends Call Me Sean says, only good about this weekend was Notre Dame losing. I got some glimmers of hope watching Michigan get dominated. And then I saw, it was great. It was a really great weekend. Like, my main games that I watched were like, Michigan loses, Notre Dame loses, Ohio State wins, Nebraska wins. Or more, Colorado loses.
Yeah. You not so much caring about Nebraska, though. There's no vitriol there, but thanking them for doing the country a service was awesome.
Coach CKD is still telling his team that they are the 16th best team in the league, and being 2-0 doesn't mean anything. He said they should be focused on Texas State when they woke up this morning. Yeah, Texas State had a lot of preseason hype as possibly getting that G5 slot in the playoffs. Not a team to sleep on. Immaculate says, Arizona State over Mississippi State. I think folks may now take my warnings about ASU seriously. I'm taking them seriously, and I'm walking it back. I'm not gonna delete the L. I'm gonna eat the L.
At least you're owning it, man.
Yeah. Full SEC bias and meaningless early polls. Absolutely. Remember, when the SEC loses, they're not a good SEC team. And when they win, whoever they beat was a quality win.
Yeah. I mean, fill in the blank, Alabama against USF. Anybody else does that, everyone's talking about it as an issue. Here, everyone magically forgets what happened preceding the last 10 minutes of that game when it was a close one, following a close game last year at USF.
Immaculate says, there's one common denominator. It's Kirk Ferentz. Cade was talking media after last week about how much he enjoyed Seth Wallace's energy. It's Kirk. He is too old school stoic. I agree with you. Look, he's a hero to you guys. I understand that. He's a legend, but sometimes you got to push legends out the door. Woody Hayes was a legend in Columbus too, but they weren't going to let him get away with punching another player.
Right. Yeah, I think you've given him enough chances to get it right at this point.
Sure. Nathan Campbell says you can't blow a 21-point. I think you're going to win. Yeah. Cincinnati blew a tremendous lead yesterday. It was disappointing. I watched parts of that game, especially towards the end. Scott Satterfield was just the wrong hire for that team. I think it was a lateral move. I understand they lost Luke Fickell. They should have went for somebody a little bigger. They've improved their football facilities. Just unfortunate. Cam Ward and Kyle McCord were the best QBs in the portal. DJU and Riley Leonard might have been lemons. Yeah, Riley Leonard looked like absolute ass for Notre Dame.
Yeah, not good.
Like, just, I would think he was throwing the game if, it's crazy how Freeman looked so good on the road at A&M, but then has his team performing so poorly at home. Again, we talked about this a little bit last night. That was a quality win, and suddenly it's not so quality. Now everybody's shitting on Texas A&M. And I believe Texas A&M plays Florida this week.
They do. They do play Florida this week.
And Florida put in their freshman quarterback, and he absolutely obliterated Graham Mertz. So we'll see if I believe you have to burn the red shirt this year for Billy Napier.
Yeah, he did great. But let's also remember who he played. Someone that most people can't even name the school. So it's all relative. But that said, one, I don't even know if Graham Mertz is going to be out of concussion protocol anyway. I'm not sure of his status, but I think for keeping Florida's fans' enthusiasm and for his own job, I think he almost has to go down that road, which sucks for Graham Mertz, but it probably just has to be done.
Stormy Cyclone says, I see Nebraska is rated now. When would you guess the last time they were rated?
I don't know.
COVID season? I think
they had a moment with Scott Frost where they had a moment before the moment went away.
They gave him an extension based off the COVID season, so I would say COVID season was when the last time they were ranked. Clay Johansson says, I don't like Nebraska not scoring in the second half. Well, that's fine, just as long as they kept hitting Shadur Sanders. Cade McNamara's QBR was 0.9.7 for the game. Say no more. Wow, you can't go negative on QBR, can you?
That's like signing your name to get your baseline in the SATs.
Colorado losing was a great time. Yeah, and they didn't look good when it was happening. They were getting beat down pretty clearly. Immaculate Mississippi State is not a good SEC team. Of course not. They lost. If they'd have won against Arizona State, they'd have been crowing about it.
Yeah, they would just be building their way back because it just means more.
It's time for Sullivan to get a shot. He is a senior, and they pulled him in as a transfer. You have to give him a shot. They don't have to do anything. It's Kirk Ferentz. Folks were saying ASU might only win 2 games all season long. I was one of those folks, and I've shut my mouth. Nathan Campbell was talking about Arkansas wasn't up 21-0. They were up 21-7. That was a 14-point deficit that Oklahoma State erased. And Arkansas gave them probably 17 of their points on turnovers. Don't push people out the door like Kirk unless you already know you are replacing him with. Grass is not always greener. I hear you. I completely understand. But they need to do something. I don't think they need to push him out the door so much as encourage a retirement.
Sometimes you need a mirror to yourself, man. Like, he needs to be thinking about what's going on for the program. After so many times of changing personnel, losing your son, you got to have like some degree of self-reflection that maybe the game has passed you by, or at least just there. It's like just time for a change and a new voice in the room.
That Nerd Bowl showed that games on the lakefront could be an adventure. The next 2 years, that wind was whipping. Yeah, that was the first game of the weekend that pissed me off. I stayed up late, watched that game, and Northwestern on third and a short one tries a quarterback sweep, gets stuffed, loses 2 or 3 yards, and then completely whiffs on the next play. And it was, I'm sure Immaculate, I think he was watching it too. It was just, they'd been running the ball so good down the middle. They'd picked up 9 yards on the first 2. Why get fancy and screw around when you've got 2 downs to make a short one? But good for Duke. Malik Murphy looked good in the second half. Keep Chopping says A&M was always just a decent win. Locking Notre Dame into the college football playoff was wild. Well, they are Notre Dame. If Notre Dame wins out, they get into the college football playoff, I think.
Yeah, they're still going. Well, I think any P4 team who is at the end of the season with just one loss has a pretty good shot of being in the top 12 just by the attrition. And if they
Depends on how they look against USC. If they beat USC, I think it's a shoe. And even if they lose close to USC, I think they might let them in with 2 losses. Jose says if Nebraska manages to stay ranked, maybe their non-AAU may not matter anymore. It's still going to matter. But that certainly takes a sting out of it. Who are your Heisman leaders 2 weeks in? Quinn Ewers, obviously, with the way he picked apart Texas' defense. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss had some gaudy numbers. I think I still like Jackson Dart as my Heisman candidate because I just think in that offense he's going to put up Joe Burrow at LSU type numbers, and I think it's going to be hard to overlook that.
Yeah, for me, I mean, both of them are definitely in the mix for sure. I think Cam Ward has a shot of it if he continues down this path. I think despite losing, Ashton Genty, Boise State running back, still has it was super impressive in that game, and I don't think we can completely rule out, as far as getting an invite to Travis Hunter despite the Nebraska-Colorado game, because he's still going to wind up playing, a ton of football the rest of the year that could have him at least get the invite to recognize what he did. If he doesn't get killed before then on the field.
Dogs and Dubs says Arizona at Kansas State Friday night is a de facto Big 12 elimination game.
Yeah,
Arizona struggled against North Arizona, so.
Yeah. Looking ahead, that's like one of the better games on the schedule. There's not a lot of it's kind of like this past weekend where there was theoretically not a ton of top 25 matchups. I didn't see how that might have changed with the new rankings. But those are the chaos weekends. But that's one of the prime games that, maybe we wouldn't have thought of it that way a few weeks ago.
David Frame says Notre Dame does not even ever deserve to be in the top 25 again until they join a conference completely, but they are a little better than I thought they were. Yeah, they are they? Which week were you watching? I think it was a little sarcasm okay. On his part there.
Okay.
Speaking of the top 25, I do want to bring it up here. Go back here. And that's probably not going to be very helpful because it's not zoomed in. And I can't get it to zoom in. Number 1, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee, Penn State, Oregon, Miami. That's your top 10.
My objections in there are like very minor, but I don't think that Penn State or Oregon should be ahead of Miami and USC at a minimum right now, based off of their play. But it's like swapping 2 spots I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but I think pollsters hate to admit they're wrong. So if they removed Oregon, who was number 3 to start the season, all the way out of the top 10 without a loss, similar for Penn State, I think Penn State deserves to be higher than, say, Missouri. Just based on the opponent. They beat West Virginia, which I think is better than any of the opponents that Missouri has had.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they have a better case, than Oregon for sure. I'm overweighting the Bowling Green performance.
Which is fair. They did struggle. We thought that might be James Franklin's brain fart game. USC at 11, Utah at 12, Oklahoma State at 13, Kansas State at 14, Oklahoma at 15, and Oklahoma struggled mightily against Houston. LSU at 16, Michigan fell to 17, Notre Dame only fell to 18, Louisville at 19, Arizona at number 20. 21, Iowa State off that big win. Clemson looked very good. They're number 22. Nebraska looked very good. They're at 23. And then you've got Boston College at 24 and entering the charts, Northern Illinois. So apparently that is a quality win for Northern Illinois and not a quality loss for Notre Dame, the fact that they did that.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument, though, that outside of maybe the top three, everything, we still need some more gauges. Like everyone's opponents, they're still suspect, or they had like an off week, or they're just coming up. So it'll be interesting to see where we are in a couple more weeks of games, and especially as everybody gets a couple of conference games under their weight. There's, questions I have on a lot of people that aren't named Texas and Georgia and probably Ohio State.
Jose says Auburn losing to Cal, and now ESPN saying Auburn is a baseball school. Yeah. You gotta wonder. I see a Florida State recruit flip to Texas this week. You gotta wonder about these Auburn recruits that are looking from the outside. Do they start to rethink their recruitment, or do they just stick with it? Losing to a team like Cal, I would start reevaluating.
Auburn needs to put some money behind a quarterback. That's a glaring error on their strategy on what they did or did not acquire in the offseason, considering their push into getting talent acquisition going.
Clay Johansson says, wasn't ASU was picked 16th in the Big 12 this year? Did we have them 16? I feel like we had them like 14 to 15.
I will look it up, but I think in the media poll they were pretty low too. Let me see if I can. I'll get the graph up and tell you where we had them.
Wallace isn't a Ferentz heir. Wallace is a Parker guy. Wallace has been Parker's assistant. I don't know. I think you get. Yeah. I don't know. That's Iowa. I don't know what they do, but I think they got to move Ferentz out.
No, we did not have Arizona State last. They were 12th or something. It was Arizona State, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston. That was the bottom of the consensus panel.
And Cincinnati and Houston have not disappointed us. They have shown that we were accurate in picking them towards the bottom. Now BYU, they've got a great defense, but boy, that offense. That is not a good offense. So they're almost like an Iowa. They got a good defense, no offense. Nebraska did not have some great win yesterday. Colorado is a trash team. I think Colorado versus Mississippi State would probably come down to who has the ball last. Yes, but wasn't it enjoyable? Wasn't it a great game to watch, especially the first half?
You can't diminish everybody's victory, right? When they play somebody in a P4, that especially when they're on the upwards, trying to bring their program back, like you have to be able to take the steps to get there. So, while I think many of us on here and across college football would agree that Colorado is a hype machine, they still like relatively held, Travis Hunter and Sanders down more than their previous games. So I'm going to give them some credit for that victory as well, in addition to my thanks.
Are you pals with Dono? Don't know him. How's about you invite him on to explain how he whiffed so badly on Cal, even went on Locked On Auburn to trash them? Okay. I don't know who Dono is, but
I'm not sure if he's talking about Alex Dono, who does Locked On ACC as well as Locked On Canes. If that's who you're referring to, Michael, just let us know.
Yeah, just let us know. I'm not familiar with the name. I apologize. Who do you think will be the Baylor new head coach? Will it be Texas high school head coach from that area? I think Baylor's probably going to pick up the guy from Texas State. If I had one guess, I think they would take the coach from Texas State.
That was a relatively disappointing game in terms of Utah not covering that spread.
Monangai has to be in Heisman discussion. I agree. I put him right up there with Genty. Fantastic running back. Notre Dame's strength of schedule was weak, and they don't play a conference championship game. No playoffs for the Irish at 10-2. Okay.
There's the world that everyone wishes for, and there's the world that Notre Dame exists in. Yeah. And as much as I would love to agree with that statement, I need to be shown that a 2-loss or a 1-loss Notre Dame is going to be left out of playoff. Let me just put it this way. If most of the people here think there was any degree of a conspiracy for FSU to be left out of the playoff, granted smaller amount of teams available, that theory should apply to Notre Dame being left out with 1 or 2 losses, in my opinion. I don't think there's conspiracies. I think there's just, whatever, we'll figure that out. But I think, sadly, that they will get in with 2 losses, despite their schedule being fairly weak and not being a conference championship game.
I will say this: I've been advocating for Notre Dame to join the Big Ten. New prerequisite: you have to beat the MAC team put in front of you. The rest of the Big Ten took care of MAC teams. So.
There should be a requirement that you need to be the best team in the state of Indiana first.
Right.
And I'm not sure that they are.
Speaking of Indiana, that coach is taking no prisoners, running up 77 points. I understand he just took over. He wants to put some excitement in this team. But there's a point where it becomes a little classless when you're clearly an above and beyond team from your opponent, and you run up the score 77-0. John Cooper used to do this. A lot of teams used to do this back in the BCS era because you needed style points.
Right.
But
we don't know that you don't need style points yet because we haven't gone through this kind of committee with this amount. But I don't know. Maybe he thinks he needs to make up the point differential from 50 years and start now in order to make it.
When you hit 50, you can take your foot off the gas. Ohio State did it yesterday, except they, unfortunately, Julian Sion went in there and threw a dart for a touchdown. It wasn't drawn up that way. Keep chopping. 2 RBs have to be Monangai and the cat from Boise State. Yeah, Genty, who was basically single-handedly carrying Boise State through that team. I would like to know if anybody's seen the special teams coach from Boise State.
I saw him. It was on a milk carton, the side of one.
Okay.
Along with it was like a double-sided one.
Yeah, I want to see him in person. Call me Doubting Thomas, but I don't know that he exists.
Yeah, the flip side had Iowa's new offense.
Monangai could have easily had 500 yards rushing yesterday if allowed. I agree with you. He could have. And unfortunately, the way the Heisman race is, it is a stats-driven race anymore. That's why I think Jackson Dart is probably my pick to win it all. I think he's going to put up gaudy numbers. You got to have gaudy numbers to win the Heisman anymore. So of the G5 schools, would you think Memphis and Northern Illinois are the current pick for CFP? Right now, you have to put Northern Illinois at the top. They've got the best win.
Yeah. I think you still got – I didn't see what happened with the Liberty game yesterday. Last time I checked, it was closer than I expected. But I think it's the 2 of them, and I think you have to keep Boise State in there. To me, those are the 3. Memphis, I think, plays Florida State this coming weekend. That's a big game for them. It's a big game for Florida State too, obviously. If they don't win that game, then all hell could really break loose beyond what's already happened. But for Memphis, that's a huge game in their goal to take that spot.
Larry, the GM, says, which of the 6 SEC teams at the top of the poll are inappropriately ranked and why? I think Missouri's ranked a little high for their opponents they've played. I have a lot of respect for Missouri. I think Missouri's going to be a very good team this year, but ranking them number 6 without, a really quality opponent, it's a little high for me. I mean,
I'll go the other way with Alabama, because I think that win with USF is deceptive. I watched all of that game, and yes, they pulled it out at the end, and I still think they should be a top 10 team. Don't get me wrong; we're talking about like degrees here. I'm not surprised that this many SEC teams are ranked both because of bias and because of where the talent bases are. But, Alabama could be down a notch or 2. They should probably have gotten more of a penalty. But most of those voters still in 2024 probably just saw the score and didn't saw how the score materialized in the last 10 minutes of that game.
I would probably swap Georgia and Texas. I would make Texas 1 and Georgia 2.
I have Texas 1 on my theoretical top 25.
Yeah. Memphis could go undefeated. Northern Illinois won't. Well, we'll see. If they get past North Carolina State, I'd be worried. Timothy Green says Georgia and Ohio State will be playing for the national championship. I have Ole Miss and Ohio State playing.
Hey, Moen, we got you on a weird loop.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I was just hearing myself as well, like a minute behind. So chat, let us know if you're hearing me live time, and or if you were hearing the same thing that Moen was hearing, it would help us out a lot.
How about now?
Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to deal with some technical stuff. You may not be hearing it the same way that we are. So
Can you hear me? Apparently you can't hear me. Can you hear me now? I can hear your dog. I am hearing beyond delayed. Okay. And let's shut this down, and let's shut this down. Okay, well, I think you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. I've taken everything down and rebooted. I can hear Moen clicking. R&R is muted now. Now I hear an echo from Rock. Reverb on Rock and Ramp. Bama O-line. Okay, so this is Rock's fault. Moen is loud and clear. Thank you. So Rock and Rant convinced me that was my fault. That was Rock's fault. So had me panicking. So but these things happen. Like I said, we've got the phone system semi worked out when I'm running voice meters. So hopefully in the future, if we get some phone calls, we can pop it in there. Can you hear me, Rock?
I can. Let's see if that got fixed.
Yeah, let me turn you down a little bit. You're running a little hot there. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I think that must have been on your end.
We shall see.
Yeah, people were siding with me in chat. They're saying that's all Rock's fault. Michael Smith says, yes, Alex Dono. Greg knows him. I'm not familiar with him, but if he's an ACC guy, that's probably why.
Yeah, he's the main guy from the Canes side. He actually used to do local radio down in Miami and does the post-game show, and he does the Locked On Canes version. And then, like, I don't know, however long ago they started the Locked On AC. Locked On ACC, he took over as co-host about 7 or 8 months ago, so he gets called in often on behalf of the wider ACC. So didn't hear what he had to say there, but that is his background, so I'm not surprised if he took more of an ACC point of view. Though he's definitely not on the ACC train other than job security. I know he would love to see Miami leave too.
Good afternoon, all. Husky W, Seahawks W. Pickles is a happy camper. Antoine Code says, isn't a 10-win Notre Dame guaranteed a playoff spot? I think so. Just my personal belief. Larry the GM says, so the beef with the SEC teams is that Mizzou should be 8 and not 6. Duly noted. PSU, who barely beat Bowling Green, is clearly better. How do we even know? But West Virginia is good. If you might have joined us a little late. We thought that Penn State and Oregon should be further back in that poll too, in favor of USC and Miami. Immaculate says, I don't personally care where Missouri is now. How they do against BC this weekend will be telling. That's
Yeah,
actually kind of an exciting matchup, huh?
Yeah, looking ahead to the matchups, that's one of the more interesting ones. And again, it's in a world of, I think BC's good. I can't really discount them doing what they're supposed to do against Duquesne yesterday. Obviously, did what they did with Georgia Tech. I'm sorry, not Georgia Tech, but with Florida State, Georgia Tech, and my Syracuse and Georgia Tech game there. But we don't know because I'm not sure about Georgia Tech anymore against Syracuse, against Florida State. So it's going to be good to get a few more games in there that we can really see. And Boston College's upcoming game will be a good indication of whether or not they're good and how it plays down to all these other games we're talking about.
Keep Chopping says Isaiah Pacheco, a pretty decent running back out of Rutgers too. I agree. So who is going to win next week? UCLA or Indiana? I put my money on Indiana.
Yeah, I would lean that way right now, based off of the early start of both teams so far.
Which of the SEC teams does not belong in the top? Are you talking about the top 10 or the top 25? If we're talking top 25, I'd probably take LSU. I wouldn't take them out all the way, but I might put them a little lower than where they're at now. Just based on the defense.
In the top 10, if you're making that decision to who doesn't belong in the top 10, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know that I think that any of them don't belong in the top 10, to be honest with you. That are there, you know.
I might also put Oklahoma a little further back after the performance against Houston.
Yeah. Missouri would be my most likely candidate to move down out of the top 10, but not because I really think that. If you're saying like one of them should be voted off the island because we want to, that's who I would go with. But like that's just about like who they played so far, not what I really think the school can actually do this year. Oklahoma for sure is one who could fall further in the top 25 overall from the SEC.
I know it's way too early for CFP predictions, but already seems SEC biased according to rankings. Some teams are going to be pissed. It's early in the season. Let's wait and see how things shake out.
Yeah, and remember, the AP poll has literally zero to – I mean, yes, it has an influence in people's minds, and you can't say what does or does not seep into perceptions, but it's not really a factor in what the committee is supposed to do. I'd be more focused on, and if you look at them right now, the strength of schedule is going to change a lot over time as more people play and things happen. But if you just look purely on all of the P4 conferences, out of conference win-loss records, they're all pretty much meh. They're all about 500 out of conference right now. Granted, there's some really great wins within there and some that are, you know, lesser schools beating lesser schools, but all of them are pretty much around 500 out of conference right now. You know, head-to-head, conference to conference, like opponents, all that stuff's going to matter more than whether like a reporter from Las Vegas did the right thing in their top 25 in week 2.
Conundrum says Bruins are 3-point home dogs versus the Hoosiers. Give me the Hoosiers all day on that one. But if you want to know the torture that is my life, I had Oklahoma State at 7.5 points. Coming down the stretch, there was no way that Oklahoma State was going to cover that. The only way possible would be with a 2-point conversion, which, by the way, it went into double overtime, and there was a 2-point conversion, and I lost that bet.
Yeah, that was one of those ones where I won Oklahoma State on that side, and I also won Arkansas on another one with an extra point or two on.
Yeah. Oh, I hated it. I was watching it, and I was like, yeah, Arkansas. I said Arkansas outright, and people are going to think, you know, I know what I'm talking about. And then Oklahoma State came back from 14 down. Reverb on Rock and Rant. Notre Dame had this issue last year. They play up to the competition versus Ohio State, then struggle versus ACC bottom feeders.
That's coaching and team leadership.
I think Marcus Freeman's out this year. Unless he gets them to the playoff and wins a playoff game, I think they might be moving on. Almighty Finn's in the house. Make sure you dig all those other teams that lost and struggled just like you do, FSU.
Oh, it's been a year for our friend Almighty Finn.
Yeah, it's been a tough year for the Seminoles. So, just we talked about it last night. I don't know if it's the portal. These kids are becoming this mercenary mentality where I've got paid and I'm not gonna, can't tell me nothing. Or some of these teams where the kids stick around and actually develop that become good players.
Yeah, I think it's a balance between them. I don't think you can go full Dabo and not play in the portal, and I don't think you can go full Colorado, where it's that extreme, unless you have just a massively, hardcore culture and the right coaches there to make sure it isn't just a bunch of mercenaries that think they're, all part of the Rock and want to shoot the missiles into the city.
So there should be 5 in the top 7, and unnamed teams should be in the top 7 instead of Mizzou. If the answer is Penn State after their game with Bowling Green, that is silly. But they have a win against a Power 4 school in West Virginia. Now, you can make the argument that West Virginia isn't as good as we thought they were going to be, but they're still a Power 4 school.
And we're not even making the argument. We're answering your question of hypotheticals.
Yeah. Yep, Oregon clearly not what we were sold in the offseason. Oregon's actually, they looked, the special teams looked fantastic. Obviously, a kick return for a touchdown over 100 yards, a punt return for a touchdown. But yeah, their defense did not look good. Genty made there was one play where it was like the first snap of a drive, and Genty just ran it for 80 yards for a touchdown. He just blew through them all. So, Dogs and Dubs, Notre Dame isn't going 10-2, might lose to Purdue on Saturday. From your lips to God's ears.
I'd love to have a falling leprechaun on the back of my screen the entire season.
If they lose to Purdue, he might not make it through the season, Freeman. Sergeant Pickle says SEC is a few elite teams and a whole lot of mid that need 4 non-conference games just to make a bowl. I'll be honest with you, the Big Ten is a few elite teams and a whole lot of mid as well. So, but we do play more conference games. So, Roll Tide Roll. Good to see you. Bama O-line is makeshift right now. Players injured and playing out of position. They actually subbed in a starter who wasn't going to play at right tackle, and that's when the offense took off. Yeah, but it shouldn't take that. It shouldn't take you into the fourth quarter to put away USF.
There's like a 40-plus slot differential on the talent rankings on 24/7 between Alabama with bad offensive line issues on injuries and South Florida.
Yeah, If we're going to hold Penn State to that standard, that they had a rough game against Bowling Green, we got to hold Alabama to that same standard. Yes, they pulled away in the fourth quarter, but, USF was within 1 score of them in 2 of the late games. So, yeah, Colorado's done. Don't see a world where Prime stays without Hunter and Shedeur. I tend to agree with you. I think he'll go to the NFL.
I don't, as what, though? Because who's giving him a job as a head coach in the NFL after 2 seasons at Colorado that look like they might look like?
Somebody will see the money sign and sign him up. So some terrible team will overpay for him. It's Jason Spangler in the house. It's not all bad. The Royals swept the Twins. Well, there you go. You got to find a silver lining. Can't Bert will beat you up every time. Everyone have a great football night and a great football life. I will see you all next time. Thanks for stopping by, Timothy Green. It's much appreciated.
Have a good night, man.
Make sure you watch some of those Wild Ute University videos while you got that membership. Sergeant Pickle says the SEC overinflates all their rankings and then get a bunch of garbage quality losses. Record versus P4 schools should be weighted more heavily. Tennessee, Mizzou, Ole Miss haven't beat a P4, much less a ranked team. Tennessee did beat a P4 this weekend. They beat North Carolina State, which North Carolina State didn't look good the weekend prior against Western Carolina.
I mean, they beat a backpack to death.
Yeah, they stomped a hole in them. I might move Tennessee up a little higher too, because they looked really good against North Carolina State.
They did. But even there, like, yes, I completely agree. They looked stellar against North Carolina State. That said, North Carolina State has not looked good this year so far, even in their other game against, Western Carolina.
Yeah, West Carolina. Jose says beating up on Chattanooga shouldn't count the same as beating Florida or LSU. Especially not LSU because they were ranked ahead of USC when they beat them. Saban to Notre Dame. I don't think so. I think Saban's had enough.
I think he's going to Notre Dame, but that's because he's taking taking the family to Paris.
Yeah. I still have not heard a compelling argument against any of the top SEC schools being in the top 7. Well, I put the win over a Power 4 opponent over somebody who hasn't played a Power 4 opponent yet. And listen,
I'm looking for the straw man.
Yeah, I'm Ohio State fan, and we haven't beat a Power 4 opponent yet. I don't think we deserve to be ranked as high as we're ranked. So,
yeah, I mean, I only responded about SEC teams moving down because you asked the question of who should move down. I wasn't saying they should move down. Those are two different things. I was answering a hypothetical, not that I said that one team should move. The two teams I think that are overrated were very specifically Oregon and Penn State, and USC at a minimum, and selfishly Miami I thought should be ahead of them based purely off of play on the field, including Penn State's win over West Virginia.
Yeah, the clear number 1 and 2. I think there's a clear number 1 and 2. Texas should be number 1. Georgia should be number 2, based off the quality of the wins.
Correct. I agree with that.
Freeman is 20-9 at Notre Dame. I am glad other big fans are wising up that Oregon hype is like 70% marketing. I hope that's the case when Ohio State plays them. But, for some reason, I'm sure they'll gel right when that happens. And
yeah, I think that they have not performed up to expectations, and I believe that there's a bit of hype. I'm not in the zone of, I think that means that their season is not going to materialize later. I am super curious, though, about their game coming up this weekend with Oregon State, just not because they've underperformed against two other opponents that they should have done better at, even if Boise State's a good school and has a good chance of getting in as a G5. I'm just curious how that game's going to all play out, whether they finally put a game together the way people's expectations of them would be.
It's going to take more than NIL to have a good team. You're going to need the right coach to make sure you're spending money on the right kids. Again, I think we found out that it's about development as much as it is about talent. Notre Dame overlooked NIU after beating A&M. Yeah, letdown game. But it was fun. It was fun watching the Notre Dame fans in the stands. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
If you get a chance to go find it, the last couple of minutes of the NIU radio call is worth listening to.
I will have to do that right after the show. Dogs and Dubs says, upset pick of the year, Florida State beats Memphis Saturday. That's a little...
FSU could use the win. FSU could use the win.
Wait, Freeman gets fired if Notre Dame goes 10-2. If they go 10-2 and lose a playoff game, I think he's out.
I think they'll be slower on. I think Notre Dame as an institution will be slower on the hook and with him than that, personally.
I don't know. That Marcus Freeman was their second choice for that job. Luke Fickell was always the pick, and Luke Fickell wouldn't take the job. He wouldn't step over Marcus Freeman to take the job. So
yeah, and I just wonder if some of the people that would want that job after people like Brian Kelly left it might just be hesitant to do it after the amount of time they're giving him. Even though he did not inherit a program, down. They were trying to hit another level, and they weren't necessarily expecting to replace their coach. I think they'll give him one more year in the scenario you just talked about. If they were to go 6-6 or something like that, then I don't know.
Okay, so they go 10-3. They lose a playoff game. Urban Meyer approaches Notre Dame and says, I'm a devout Catholic. I want to come back for one more coaching go-round. I've got the pedigree. I've won 3 national championships, 2 different teams. You haven't tasted national championship gold since 1988. Does Notre Dame make the jump and hire Urban Meyer?
Well, first, I need to go to Costco and stock up on popcorn if that were to come. And then second, I don't believe Notre Dame is hiring somebody like Urban Meyer with how they view themselves, even if he was quote unquote devout Catholic for them. I just think that there's enough of a taint that they're, Father X in the administration presidency is not going to do that. But
as long as he said, his Hail Marys went to confession, everything would be forgiven, Rock. I think you got to take that into account, that's all about a redemption arc. I think they would fire him in a second if they thought they could hire Urban Meyer. Wolverines are a fraud and will be exposed by others. They definitely have problems on the offense, especially at the quarterback position.
USC game is going to be interesting there.
Troll Grinding Cheek Clapper says, honestly, I'm pretty upset over Notre Dame losing. I honestly thought USC would get the chance to ruin the perfect record for them. Not even a joke. Well, take comfort in the fact that you can now go in there and blow them out.
It's hard. I used to have that zone too, where you wanted the schools you wanted to beat the most to actually be as highly ranked as possible when you met them so that you could do the damage. But it's also quite fun to relish in others that your rivals have their bad moments like Notre Dame's going through. It may not be as sweet, but it's still pretty damn awesome.
Michigan lost big, Notre Dame lost big, Colorado lost big, and the lights mysteriously went out in the Coliseum. All played a pivotal role in the destruction of the Pac-12. Make of it what you will. So now there is a curse of the Pac-12, apparently.
So I think it was Josh Pate posted that, last year you might remember that it was one of the best seasons in recent Pac-12 memory. And right now, I think all of the former Pac-12 schools have probably one of the best combined records so far this season.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left here, guys. I want to get off here before the NFL game starts. That's why we're probably going to move to 7 p.m. Eastern for the duration of the NFL season. I don't want to cut into NFL time, and I don't want to run head-to-head against it either. So we're going to power through some of these comments. If you want to guarantee your comment gets read, it'll have to be a super chat at this point, but I will try to get through as many member comments as I can as we're heading out the door here. Almighty Finn says Syracuse smashed Georgia Tech. It was a closer game than that.
It was a closer game, but Syracuse was blowing them off the line running wise. Like Georgia Tech did a good job of keeping it close, but if you watch the game, in my view, like they were just stronger in the trenches.
Arkansas beat Okie State like a drum on both sides of the ball. They really just laid the ball on the turf and said, "Here you go." Yeah, they did. You can't have that many mistakes. I think they had 3 turnovers in the second half. You can't do that and expect to win a football game.
Yeah, that was I was pretty impressed with the first half from Arkansas in that game. It was unfortunate for their fans to not take that one. You want those wins. They need those wins heading into the season in conference.
Troll Grinding Cheek Clapper. I'm worried as a USC fan, to be honest. PSU and a little more worried about, especially compared to Michigan, at least so far. Too much PTSD from promising years turned to ashes for this USC fan. Do not overlook Michigan. I'm telling you right now that, yes, it's a down year for them. They're not going to be as good as they were last year, but if USC goes in there, expecting to win instead of, preparing to win, you might slip up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, USC's defense has been pretty impressive, especially compared to where it was last year. It's not saying it's one of the top 5 defenses in the country, but their defense coordinator they took over from UCLA is no joke, and he's clearly made a difference pretty quickly. And I, for one, think it would be pretty fascinating for college football for 2 of the bigger college powers in the last 40, 50 years in the urban centers of Los Angeles and Miami to be good again together for the first time, at the same time that you still have the powerhouses, the blue bloods of Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia all doing that. It would definitely make the sport even more interesting than it already is if those were all coinciding at the same time for a change.
And I will say we can't leave out Nebraska. Nebraska keeps winning, they certainly look very good too. Now, obviously, they took their foot off the gas in the second half, but the first half performance was pretty good from that defense. And Dylan Raiola, he showed some flashes yesterday. I know he's young, but he showed some flashes until he transfers out this offseason to another program.
You're convinced of that?
Look, I just play the if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. He's transferred 4 times. He's transferred to 3 high schools and 4 colleges, or not transferred, but flipped his commitment. So, Troll Grinding Cheek Clapper says, I'm more worried about USC playing Penn State than Michigan. I mean, yeah. But I don't sleep on Michigan. All this SEC hate with you guys knowing if your team played either of the 7 in the top 10 in the playoffs, you'd lose. Right now, the only team outside the SEC who have a shot is Ohio State. My team is Ohio State. And I know Penn State had a letdown game against Bowling Green, but Penn State is very good.
You know, my team only had one SEC game on the schedule, and we did what we could to bring the hate. So,
SEC blue blood, no less. Jose said Michigan worries me more because they will be pissed. Yeah, it's a game, but you can't overlook them. That would be my fear if I'm a USC fan, that they overlook Michigan. And they go.
Michigan's problem is their best potential quarterbacks are no longer on their roster, and they're playing for other people.
Yeah, they've got to figure it. Warren looked good in the second half, but again, Texas took their foot off their throat. I mean, that Texas could have easily scored 66 on Michigan in that game. Illini Ted says the Illini, big NIL. Brooks, the former Texas DB, has barely seen the field. Burnt isn't afraid to still play who works the hardest. The Illini secondary won us the KU game. That interception was a fantastic interception in that game. R&R, I am addressing the room in saying the SEC is overrated. Well,
Understood.
Understood, Larry, but just remember, opinions are like assholes. We all got them, and some of them really stink. Is there any chance Wisconsin beats Alabama?
Did Tyler Van Dyke transfer for Cam Ward?
I don't know, but I want to see the point spread. I don't think they have an early point spread on that game yet.
I don't see that one, even with the relative 3.5 quarters of keeping it close with USF. I don't think they have the quarterback to do that.
Sergeant Pickle says my bold call was UW upsetting Michigan at home week 6. Might as well write it now. You might want to focus on your game next week against Washington State. They look pretty good against Texas Tech. I know Texas Tech hasn't looked great this season, but Washington State has something to prove. UW's going through a bit of a rebuilding season. That's a trap game right there. And depending on the spread, I might take Washington State. We'll see.
I have a sympathy vote for Washington State. It's called my thank you Washington State for Cam Ward.
True with the CFP too. Maybe USC can get the chance to kill Notre Dame's CFP chances. There you go. Find a positive in beating Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, USC has got really good odds right now on making the CFP. If you look at ESPN's all-state prediction tool, whatever they have for the CFP, I think they're in like the top 8.
USC, Miami, Nebraska, and Illinois all back.
Okay. I will not say the word all back, just like Moen will not say the word go blue.
Yeah.
I will say that Miami is playing well and they need to continue. But any real Miami fan should know better than to say Miami is back, and the ones that say that don't know better.
Troy Grinding Cheek Clapper says, at least with the PSU versus USC, it's a win-win for me having gone to both. Made those Rose Bowl games stress-free for me. Lucky you.
Honestly, you should be ranked number 1 anyway because it's about the best screen name on the web.
There you go. We'll factor that in there. Daniel Geiger says, Moen's saying something nice about Michigan. I didn't say something nice. I said that can't overlook them. I want to make sure USC doesn't overlook them and goes in there and takes care of business. I want their spirit broken. Raiola is a Husker for life. Okay. You say so. I'm just saying the kid has a tendency to cut and run.
Well, he does have relatives on the staff, so maybe that's. Listen, I am sure Nebraska can cut a check to him if it came down to it, that we keep him there if he was looking for that opportunity. If you see like his uncle or whatever it was suddenly leaving somewhere, you can start checking FlightAware.
Macedo X says, hot thy like button. I agree with you. And you can hit it as well. It'd be much appreciated, sir. Mosito's probably riding the wave of that Rutgers win. Looking forward to also seeing that Cal and UCLA game now. Ha 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 ha. Poor UCLA.
Miami's actually got to go to Cal, so I'm definitely caught. I was paying attention to that Auburn game, and they looked good. And I thought that score was closer than the game really was to me as well.
John Dry says, hi, y'all, guns up. Put the guns down and learn to play football. Texas Tech. You've had so much hype the last 2 years, and you've just looked terrible the first 2 weeks.
Shots fired.
Yeah. Does Wisconsin have a QB equivalent of Cal's Mendoza? If so, then they have a chance. Damn, didn't Auburn crap the bed against Cal? I've been waiting all day for Sunday night. Later. Have fun. Enjoy that game. We're getting off here real soon. And we'll end it with this. Aaron Frazier. Good to see you, Aaron. Raiola grandfather is a former Miami alum and player, and his father is a former Nebraska alum and player. So
yeah, I mean, look, I personally think that Miami's starting quarterback for next season is unlikely to be on the current roster. So everything that Cam Ward is doing is waving the flag for recruiting in the portal. And I like some of the players we have coming in on the quarterback, but I think Miami's starter next year is not in Miami right now.
Okay. Some programming notices before we jump off here. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., the Big Ten Mafia Show. We will break down the Big Ten games of the week and go ahead and give our previews and early picks for next week's Big Ten slate of games. And then on Tuesday at 8 p.m., you have the Big 12 Mafia with Nate and Wild Ute, where they will be breaking down the Big 12 games of the week and giving some early picks on that. And I don't know if we're going to do a Wednesday show or not this week, so stay tuned to us on Twitter, at the CFB Mafia, at Moen After Dark, at Rock and Rant. Rock and Rant, anything else you want to say before we end this shindig?
No, man, it was just freaking the quintessential week of college football where everyone says there's only 2 good games, and it turned out there was 20. And yes. Hopefully that repeats itself this next coming weekend, where I don't even know if there's an actual top 25 versus top 25 matchup. I have to cross-reference it again, but every week with college football, there's something to go watch. And then I think having the playoff is making it even more interesting, as I kind of suspected personally before it started.
Yeah, college football is one of those sports where you lose a little money and you're upset, but then Notre Dame loses too and you forget about it. So with that, I would say peace out. We will catch you tomorrow on the Big Ten Mafia Show. Everybody, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Peace out.